Dan Bailey from Tradie HQ. How are you, Dan?
I'm well, thanks, mate. How are you?
Going really well. Going really well. Now, do you want to just give us a brief rundown of what your business does?
Yeah, so I mean the sort of one sentence explanation of Tradie HQ that I've come up with over the last couple of years is that it's a co-working and business incubator specifically for trade-based businesses. So taking that into consideration, I identified that there was a bit of a gap in the co-working market. You know, co-working being such a great concept for and flexible workspaces for startup businesses. But they don't always have to be startups. But yeah, startup businesses specifically. In so much as there's plenty of co-working stuff out there, but there was nothing targeted primarily at tradies. And with myself as an electrical contractor and electrician by trade, I realised that there were a few extra requirements for tradies or trade-based businesses. So Tradie HQ was formed, and it was formed off the back of providing that opportunity for trade-based businesses to be able to make the transition out of home. So
Awesome.
to be able to create that sort of home work divide and separation. That's what we did. We set out to start Tradie HQ, and that's what we've ended up with.
Awesome. And you're so well located in the Perth northern suburbs there. For those that don't know Perth, you're very well located.
Yeah, so I mean that was part of the planning as well, is that we knew that in order for it to be successful, at least for this first initial Tradie HQ, is that it needed to be somewhere that was central to not only the greater Perth metro area, but also in a location where for the tenants that we have, bearing in mind that they're trade-based or trade-related, that it needed to be proximal to their suppliers and all that sort of thing. So for those listeners who aren't aware, we're in Osborne Park, which is sort of, I call it the northern suburbs commercial CBD.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I think we're about five kilometres from the city. But within Osborne Park itself, we've got every single supplier for every single industry you could ever imagine, whether it's electrical, plumbing, carpentry, and all that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah, awesome. And Dan, you've been around for a few years now?
yeah, so Tradie HQ's official opening was in December of 2020. So sort of in the middle of the whole COVID thing, which sort of had pros and cons for starting up a new business whose basic
Yes.
concept is a bunch of strangers in a communal location. But
Yep.
there were a few things that came about that made it the right time, and so that was what we ended up. So it's been 2.5 years now, and yeah, just sort of going from strength to strength, really. Like we've got 20 offices in total across the facility, and with 16 businesses operating out of here. So there's a couple of businesses with multiple offices and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And yeah, plus everything else that we do. So I didn't really mention it. I mentioned at the front that our intent was to make it tradie specific. So on top of the dedicated offices that we've got, we've also got everything that a normal co-working space would have that you'd see in a CBD location or otherwise. So we've got meeting rooms, a communal kitchen space, a co-working space, like an open plan sort of hot desk arrangement. And on top of that, we've also got a gym, storage facilities, and a workshop. So for the tenants that we've got who are trade-based businesses, they've got the opportunity to be able to not only have an office separate from home, but they can also free up all of their garage space or their shed space where they might have kept all their spare parts and that sort of thing, because we've got that storage option too.
Awesome idea. And if you were to start your business again from scratch, what would you do differently?
Well, I guess because for me, with Tradie HQ, given the fact that it was something that hadn't been done before, so it sounds a bit conceited when I say it, but I'm completely transparent about how I come up with this. And I say that Tradie HQ is the first co-working space specifically for tradies. And obviously, I haven't scoured the globe looking for that. However, I've scoured Google in my
Okay.
when I first come up with the idea, as you do with an idea, like, oh, has this been done before? And so when my wife and I started that process, and she's a lot more thorough than I am, we realised that there actually wasn't any co-working spaces specifically for tradies that were more business focused. You know, there were a few places around very similar to like a men's shed sort of thing where you could go and you know, use a workshop and that sort of thing, but there was nothing specifically for tradies that provided that extra business support and availability of offices and that sort of thing. So going back to the question about what I do differently, it's the whole process from starting Tradie HQ to where we are now in 2.5 years has been an evolution of ideas. And so I looked at it from a perspective of very similar to what they do when you're trying to develop a digital product like an app or something like that. There's a term called an MVP, which is a minimum viable product.
Yep.
And so my first actual ideas of Tradie HQ was that the co-working side would be the most desirable aspect of what we were going to do, meaning that if you're a tradie who's working on the road, you'd be able to drop in somewhere, use a hot desk, put your laptop down, get some work done, and then go home. As it turned out, you know, a couple of months into already opening, I realized that the demand was actually for offices. And so basically one of the things that I did, so I designated a spot in Tradie HQ, which was going to be the co-working space. So I knocked down all these walls, ripped out offices, made this open plan co-working space, and subsequently rebuilt 2 of the offices that I knocked down because the demand was for offices. So if I think about what I would do differently, it's more a fact of what will I do differently for subsequent Tradie HQs.
Right. Fair call.
And yeah. So armed with the knowledge that I've got now, there's definitely different ways that I would do things. But I guess one thing that I would do the same is maintain the mentality of the fact that come up with a plan based on the information you've got at hand.
Yep.
Run with that plan, but make sure that you've got enough flexibility in that to be able to sort of, as they like to say, pivot or shift direction subject to consumer feedback.
Yes.
So that's the whole MVP model, being that you get something to market and then rely on what the market feedback is in order to develop subsequent iterations of whatever that product might be. And it doesn't need to be digital. Obviously, in my case, it was physical.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So what do you reckon are the common misconceptions about running a business, and how do you work with those?
I think like I come from a fairly decent sort of small business background. My dad had a small business. Well, actually, it went from a small to probably a large, then back to a small, and a medium, and then back to a small. So, my wife and I also have another business, which is a hair salon. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and this is based around our interaction with friends who don't have a small business, so they're employees and that sort of thing. The biggest misconception is that you've got all this free time.
Yes.
and you don't have free time. The one thing you've got in the majority of cases is the luxury to be able to assign when you do the work that you need to do. So I had a conversation the other day with a friend who is a small business owner himself, and he's like, yeah, the luxury of owning your own business is you can choose how you work your 60-hour week. So, you know,
yeah, interesting.
The thing is, you know, like it's having your own business is great, and being in business is great, but you need to really go into it understanding all of the risks involved and all of the work. And one thing that I always try and impart on anyone who wants to start their own business, and obviously with my background, it's predominantly trade-based businesses,
Yep.
is that if you have a significant other, then they need to be on board from the outset, because there have been so many businesses fail because there was not a long enough or in-depth enough consultation period with the person that you're sharing your home with. And things change pretty rapidly once you go from wages to running your own business.
Oh yeah,
in terms of
very
household cash flow, everything. So
yeah. And how do you balance that work-life scenario? Or
so
don't
there's a
you?
no. Well, that's it. So there's I've seen many variations of it's a triangle, and it's like
Yep,
there's something on each side of the triangle, and they say you can have two of those, and whether it's relating to like a good, a cheap, and a quick job or something, you can pick
that's right.
two of the three. So for me, when it came to Tradie HQ, there was family, Tradie HQ, and sleep. So there were two that I could choose,
Yep.
and obviously family and Tradie HQ took precedence at that point in time, and so I had to forego sleep. But I was fortunate enough that obviously learning from, like I mentioned before, learning from my own and other people's mistakes, we never proceeded until my wife was 100% on board, and so she understood that. Yeah, look, I'll come home, I'll pick the kids up from school, we'll drop them off, we'll get them fed, but then I've got to go out from 7 until midnight because we're fitting out Tradie HQ with
Yep.
the end goal in mind of getting it ready for tenants and that sort of thing. So
Absolutely.
that's the balance, and
Yep.
it can't, if you're on your own, there's plenty of podcasts and influencers out there that, if you're 23 years old and you've got no risks, then that's fine. But as soon as you've got a family and other people to consider, then that anything you do needs to be done in consultation with them, and they need to be fully aware of what's going to be involved. And also they need to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, because everyone's making sacrifices at that point. So
Yep.
you need to make sure that there's something there, and you need to be constantly assessing your progress towards those goals to make sure that everyone is still on board and supportive of the process.
That must be even more challenging for you, given you've got multiple businesses.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I guess so I mean, so as it sits, our family, we've got, like I said, my wife's business, which is a price attack franchise at the Galleria.
Yep.
So she looks after that. We've had that for 12 years. And so we're fortunate enough at this point in time to be in a position where that's basically under management with, sort of minimal guidance from her. And then my electrical contracting side of things, when it came to starting Tradie HQ, I paired that right back to focus on the niche parts of the industry that I do, which sort of allowed us to still maintain our household income, while at the same time giving me the time to be able to focus on business development. Business development now, but back at the inception, it was obviously physical time on site to be able to do the fit out and get everything ready for tenants.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's the one bit of advice you'd give to somebody that was thinking about going into business?
So the one bit of advice I would say is find someone. Actually, no. The one bit of advice I would give someone who's going into any business is that, and this is the process that I went through for Tradie HQ. So when I first came up with the idea of Tradie HQ, like I mentioned, I spoke to enough people to instill confidence in me that it was a good idea. And a lot of those people were prospective sponsors or supporters or corporate affiliates that we've had on board. And so what I had to do there was come up with a pitch to those people to say, hey guys, look, this is the idea I've got. I would like you to come on board. I would like your support, whether it's services in kind or direct capital sort of sponsorship affiliation. But in order for me to present that to them, I needed to come up with a pitch. And that pitch needed to be sufficient enough for them to go, okay, well, I can see, I know Dan, I understand what he's doing. I can see potential for a tangible return on investment of whatever he's asking for. And in going through that process, I thought this is probably something that people need to apply to any business they want to start. And so if you think about my background as an electrical contractor, if you wanted to become an electrical contractor, I think you should go through the process of putting together a package whereby you could go to a friend or a colleague or anyone that you know and say, hey, I want to start an electrical contracting business. I would like you to invest in it. These are my points of difference, and this is what I'm going to do different to every other electrical contractor that's on the market. And I think as a thought exercise, that should get you to go, well, do I have a point of difference? Do I have something that's different to what other people are offering now? And I think if, subject to what your actual ultimate goals are, if you don't have something that's different to what's being offered in the market at the moment, you probably need to ask yourself whether or not you're better off going and working for someone who is already in that industry, and adding value to their company, and subsequently, receiving benefits and all that sort of stuff from adding value to their business.
Absolutely. You've got to be able to find space in a crowded market. Yeah, most
Yeah.
Yeah. Last question from me. What is your biggest learning since you've been in this business?
My biggest learning would be that, and it's cliche, but there literally is no end to the learning. Like just when you think that you've got something down and you think you've got a good model, like I've had it, and hand in hand with this is the fact that the mentality we need to maintain is one of collaboration, and the whole abundance mentality as opposed to scarcity. Because I've been fortunate enough that through my whole journey with Tradie HQ, through different sort of people that I know, I've been able to speak to other co-working or CEOs and directors of other co-working spaces who, again, have been so forthcoming with information on the way they operate their business.
Yep.
When in all reality, there's a degree of competition there, but the people that I've spoken to have been so open in explaining to me how they run their business, even to the point of showing financial statements and reports.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And so, with that sort of mentality, like, the thing is that you don't know what you don't know. And if you go through thinking that that everything's fine, then there's something lurking around the corner. You've always got to stay on top of the game and make sure you're trying to stay on the leading edge. And it goes, for tradies, it's so easy to become complacent and just find something that you do it day in, day out. You've got the same customers, it might be the same line of work, but one shift in the market and you've got all your eggs in one basket. You haven't had the time to work on your own professional or personal development, and all of a sudden your exposure to the risk of that one particular market collapsing comes to the forefront. So yeah, my thing would be, don't stop learning and paying attention.
Absolutely right. And it sounds to me like you've got a very open mindset in terms of abundance and sharing, and that's part of the learning as well, isn't it? So that's really good advice for anyone thinking about jumping into business, because it's not for the faint-hearted, is it? As you say, there's competing ends at all steps of the process.
Yeah, it's definitely not for the faint-hearted, and the thing is, you can't go and you shouldn't be in business to earn wages, because you're taking on such a massive amount of risk. You're taking on risk. You are sacrificing home and family life, or even if you're single, you're sacrificing experience. You're not if you're not working correctly and you're not charging yourself out at the amount that you're worth, you're not allowing yourself the 4 weeks of holidays that you might have, and so you're losing out on that experience and doing stuff. So you've really got to understand your worth and have faith in it, and find out the best ways to be able to demonstrate that value to your prospective clients, so they're comfortable in the fact that, yeah, look, they're paying this amount, which might be percentages more than the market, but if you can demonstrate that value,
yep,
all of a sudden, the price is not the competition now.
That's right. It's always about the value. So Dan Bailey, Tradie HQ, thank you so much for your time.
No, Paul, thank you, mate. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about Tradie HQ and my experiences. So hopefully everyone gets a little bit of value out of it.
I'm sure they will. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thanks, mate.
Bye.